Okay, welcome everybody. It is time. Let's get into it. This is an old track of mine called Arcology 1 that I produced using a development version of Pulse Engine. In fact, the bassline main melody thing, that's all Pulse Engine, which we might look at with some of the updates to that one today. But yeah, as I was saying, you may have noticed, yeah, it's a little blue here. You may have noticed a number of recent updates. So the family and the whole ecosystem of Manifest audio devices has greatly expanded, and there's been a bit of a refresh. There was maybe a bit of a lull for a couple months because I was working so hard on this stuff, but I'm really excited to get into what's going on and how it all connects together. And a lot of the new tools and new updates are based on further connecting different elements of the ecosystem together and uniquely applying some features maybe developed in an unrelated area that I realized could make sense in another device. For example, the count options, which were first introduced with X-Relay, now add all kinds of new probability, for example, in Chance Engine. But yeah, I thought we could start today with some Rhythm Engine stuff. And so there are a couple different ways to do this. I have got a very rudimentary drum rack clip going here, and I've taken the liberty of adding some samples up here that I might use. Yeah, I think I'll try something with the cowbell and the clave to start. So let's just see for reference in the in-out, the cowbell and clave. This will become important in a moment. D2 and D sharp 2. So I have two options here with the Rhythm Engine, which is our new rhythm generator, real-time rhythm generator, but it can also be used as an arpeggiator and for all kinds of fun stuff. Could make an entire track just using that one tool probably, but there's a lot to cover, so we'll show other stuff. But we will give away Rhythm Engine at the end, so stay tuned in for the giveaway portion if you want a chance to win one of those. And yeah, so where is that? Just go here. Maybe I'll type it in. There we go. So now I could drop it on this drum rack pad, but to make a little more clear some of the functionality, I'm going to drop it on the entire drum kit, which means that when I play this clip, by default, we won't hear anything from the MIDI notes. We're just going to hear the rhythm pattern that's being generated on the maracas, because that's, I guess, the maracas are on C2. In order to hear the drums that are coming through, I want to switch this to blend mode. And that allows, in any of our devices, the MIDI to pass through. So solo means don't let any input go to the output because maybe we're using the input to transpose or something like that. But in this case, I want to blend it. And I'm going to switch to drums mode. And this flips it to a chromatic scale, which is important because the D and D sharp, well, they happen to be in C minor, but if I were in a different scale or they weren't in that key, they might not be accessible. So I'm going to... So now these cowbells are being generated alongside the incoming MIDI blended with it. And it's a little loud, so I'm just going to dial that velocity down. And so what's happening here is that at a bass rate of 16th notes, it's randomly choosing within this range of multiplying by 3, so a 16th note and 2 16th note rests, or it could be 1 16th note with no rest, or 2 16th notes. Well, that's an 8th note, 1 16th followed by 1 rest. I'm kind of not describing it so well, but it's the multiplication factor that's being randomized on a per note basis. So every time a new note rolls in, it decides should it be 3 16th notes in duration, or 2 or 1. Now the actual note hold can be changed here with percussion, it's not so detectable. But what I want to do is just add one step of pitch deviation. And now it's randomly selecting between the cowbell and the claves. So this can be useful maybe with something a little more purpose-driven. For example, I'm not so convinced with a cowbell and the claves. Maybe we'll come back to that later after I get a bass line going. But let's see, I've added some other stuff here. So this is going to be on, these are 3 rims. So it's going to be D3. So let's put this up an octave. And instead of being 2 semitones up in deviation, so now it's switching between these rims, all of which need a little work. But I think this E sharp 1 is going to be E sharp. Did I just say E sharp? F1. It's been a little too long. There we go. Now we have some sounds that are working. So this is the purpose of pitch deviation in a rhythmic context. Now we can add some velocity deviation as well, which allows you to randomize between additional velocity values with each new note. And here's a really simple but helpful new feature to the whole line of devices, including free updates to, say, Pattern Engine, which is the new global swing awareness, which is not being recognized here because I am pinned locally. But if I put this into the global mode, then we get the swing coming through. So it's up to you to decide how and when you want to use that. But in this case, yeah, I think I'll just leave it there, and then maybe I would have to move this other rim to a different pad so it can be in the correct scale and key, and then randomize upward accordingly. There we go. And we're getting some extra rests because it's occasionally going to that middle chain. So that's kind of nice, actually. It's making it a little more spacious. And now, yeah, let's get a little more global groove going. And that's enough on the percussion for now. Let's use Conversation Engine to generate a bass line. So I've got the Drift Kit D bass, just randomized a fun bass sound here. Clicking randomization on the rack and adjusting some parameters. And let me just type Conversation Engine. There it is. And now we're just going to hear C4 because by default it plays the top voice. So Conversation Engine is a call and response sequencer. So it's got 2 voices, and the top one corresponding to this, in my live theme at least, light blue color. If you're using a different theme, it might look different. Element, that's a great question about the groove. So it is just using the default Swing 16, what's it called? Swing 16th 66 groove. That is the default here. And yeah, at current time, that's the only groove internal to the devices that can be used as a Swing 16. Or, I mean, the groove amount will be applied regardless of what groove interval is selected here, but it's just a standard swing. In other words, this controls the amount, and what's nice about that is if you're working with a standard swing, the devices automatically inherit the swing amount. However, yeah, if you're using with a different groove in the groove pool, it might not be recognized by these devices yet, but that's something I would like to add for sure. So the Conversation Engine also automatically adopts that swing, 23%, just when I dropped it in, same as the scale and key as you're used to with all our devices. So now at least standard swings apply in that way as well. So, you know, gone are the days of having to drop the device in and then adjust the swing settings. It's all globalized. But so if I toggle any of these steps, then they go to the other red voice in this theme. Again, different theme, different color. And each voice has its own pitch. This is velocity. Both of those have deviation, similar to the rhythm engine. Note length, density, And let me just hit the random button a couple times. And now we're going to hear this alternation between C2 and C4. And with that 23% swing, we're already grooving here. And I'm going to adjust the note length here. So those top ones are quite staccato now. And let's bring the low ones up in velocity. And let's bring some negative velocity downward here on the top ones. Make it a little more variable. And then maybe we can add some scale aware pitch deviation. So it's choosing notes above C4, but we could do negatively as well. So you kind of want to set your floor or ceiling with this value and then choose how far above or below it you want to potentially go. Now, what gets really fun with this, well, there are a lot of things that get really fun with it, which we'll look at momentarily. You know, we can easily randomize a new pattern here, but we can now use Euclidean start points. So as I select the pattern here, 7 fills, and this is with the set setting, so all of those 7 steps are locked, which means that if I hit the randomize, it will only randomize the unlocked steps. But we can say, hey, either obey the locks that are in place or veto them. I don't want to get too lost in the weeds on the intricacies of the Euclidean and count-based programming here, but let's just reset it like that. We can shift the start point, and you see them slide around there. And as you may be familiar with some of our other devices, we can, of course, change the Euclidean direction or invert them quite easily. Now, it works in tandem with the automatic randomization that's been a feature of Subtraction Engine, which this is loosely based on. So I want to, first of all, enable this randomization, and you'll see that the locked steps are not modified. They remain assigned to the top voice. And it's randomizing every 1 bar. So let's set that to every 2 bars. Those other steps will randomize by this amount. And now I have the Euclidean reset. So now every 2 bars, it'll reset to that Euclidean pattern. Actually, let's do this. Euclidean resets every 2 bars, randomization every 1 bar. Okay, I'm going to increase the randomization amount so it's more noticeable. So you can see it returning to that original Euclidean pattern there, which I think is maybe more what I want to roll with. So I'm just going to disable the auto randomization here and try the count-based mode instead. So you get this other version where we can set a pattern based on a certain count. So every 3rd step will be on right now. And yeah. Where it gets interesting with these is when we have it reset every certain number of bars. So every certain number of steps. So let's go there and then 3. So it's another way to generate patterns really quickly. And yeah, I'll just enable the auto randomization. And then again, this has the same reset to go back to that original version. Now, what I like to play with performatively here is the ability to transpose, right? So if I click the global transpose, So I can start playing on my push, which is off camera here, and get some transpositions of the entire pattern. But we have selective transposition here. So I can say, let's leave that lower note at C2, and I'm just going to transpose the C4, the top voice. So that's a lot of fun. I enjoy messing around with that. We can similarly adjust the density of the whole pattern together with this sort of global density, but this can also be done again on a per voice basis. Okay, and so now the last thing that's really crucial to show with Conversation Engine, besides the fact that we can do way longer patterns, which it follows through up here, is that we can send the output to, I didn't have to stop play, I just need a little break there. We can send the output to any instance of X relay elsewhere in the project. So X relay, I'm going to set it to receive from source relay 1. That's all I have to do on X relay. Otherwise, it'll just receive from the MIDI coming in on this track. And then I can go back to the D bass, and I'm going to say, let's send the top note. I like the bass note here. Keep that on the D bass instrument, but I'll send this one to relay 1. And now, so global density, is global density a chance, or is it selectively disabling? It's not selective. If you wanted to selectively disable specific notes, then you would want to go for subtraction engine currently. There may be, yeah, that might be something I consider adding, but currently it's like a probability-based thinning of the note output. So what instrument should we put here? I'm going to stick with the drift kit selections, but let's do like some keys maybe and see what we come up with. Right? So if I go back here and set it to the track, it goes back to the D bass, and let me just prepare those keys a little better. One of my favorite new features with the updated chord device, which I'll put after the relay and before the D keys, is the probability on the extra note shifts here. So let's put these at 50% each, and let's route it back to there. Where were we? Ah, yes. So it's actually the same note coming through, but it's just the different chord voicings. Brooklyn in the building. Love it. Welcome. Good day. A good day for New York. Very happy for all my New York people. All right. Let's also give it some velocity. Well, we already have the velocity deviation. Let's give it some. Nah, we don't want to go higher. So actually, in lieu of the pitch deviation, which is kind of working, but I'm not super convinced, I'm going to leave it. Yeah, it should still. I can play those notes in real time. So I'm going to go ahead and just record a little sequence of that. Getting some real housey jam here, but it's in that call and response with the bass sound. And so there are all kinds of different ways to intricately program that with the auto randomization and the count-based and Euclidean stuff. But yeah, I think I recorded that too long. That's okay. I'll just... I think, I don't know about that one. Very Jupiter jazzy indeed. Nice. Yeah, I'll just dial that cutoff down a little bit. So this is one of the Drift Kit racks that comes also with the new Ultra bundle. And so we're just unfolding this, you know, rhythmic pattern from the rhythm engine and the conversation engine, now going to the bass and the keys. So yeah, I want to add some other textural layers here, and I'm just gonna go ahead and I just realized I haven't saved the project. Okay. Because I like what I'm doing here. Now I have these drums with some follow actions, sort of moving them around. And so now what I want to do is grab our X-Tonal, the new X effect that comes with XFX V2. I'm going to drop it before these auto filters. And I'll just solo it so we can really hear. And you're hearing kind of a continuous synth tone as I go all the way to wet, because the threshold is so low. So it's always being triggered. And now as I bring the threshold up, it's being triggered by the drums. Now I can set it to receive, let's go MIDI from the D-Bass pre-effects. So now it's going to get this same transposition. That's so funny. Okay, cool. So now it's transposing along with that. And I can move the octave up or down. And, you know, I think I'm going to get rid of the drums at some point, but I want you to hear what's going on with them. So I'm going to turn a quantized delay on here. So that'll quantize it to the nearest 16th note. So now it sounds a little more interesting, a 16th note delayed from the actual drum pattern, I find. And does the integration with Push 2 let you improv with the conversation engine? Absolutely, it does. There's a bit of menu diving to go through all the different step on off menus, but it's all in there. So yeah, I've created some performance menus that should make it pretty optimal and fun to play with. And as far as the transposition, absolutely. Okay, so we can adjust the shape of the oscillator generated by X-Tonal. And let's go all the way wet. We've got a little oscillator effect on there, as well as, of course, you know, be remiss without some kind of filtration. And I want to modulate some of this with the new LFOX. Where are you, my friend? I have not yet added that to where it should be. Or is it? Ah, it's here. There we go. Almost. So this has a new mode called slopes, which is a little tricky to get a handle of, but it basically is continuously changing directions between a minimum and a maximum with this sort of diagonal slope shape. So I'm going to map that to our effects parameter. Let's see if we can slow it down. And I'm going to try to reduce the likelihood of that direction change by pulling this down. Give it a little smoothing. And now all the X effects that have like a discernible effects tail have been given their own discrete panning control. So let's reduce the amount of that. And let's go ahead and grab another LFO-X, and all of the Mod Squad Pro devices have seen overall processor improvements. So the all the different LFO modes and whatnot are just a lot more efficient. Let's draw one in. Why not? I was going to go for the wander, but that's too easy. So I'll just click and drag to just get all creative. Draw a happy little shape. And let's go ahead and let's do like 5 whole notes there. And that's controlling the shape now, right? Yeah, cool. We got something cooking up here. This might just turn out okay. Okay, I gotta fix that clap. Just gonna one-shot that thing, which might have a slightly different meaning these days, but there we go. Nice and tight. Tighten it even further with a bit of a high pass on there. Okay, cool. So, what else should we get into here? I think it's time to maybe look at taking the chance engine to process the MIDI going to these keys with a little more control. So, the all-new Chance engine has a lot of interesting new features. So we've got, for example, it'll be hard to demonstrate the offset with all the random notes coming in. It's hard to get a grip on exactly when notes are supposed to happen. But we have this new offset, which will create a probability that incoming notes will be delayed one time, not with any feedback or anything, just that's why it's called offset, by these exact amounts. So a 1/16th note divided by 1 is still a 16th note, times 2 is an 1/8 note. So 65% chance all the incoming notes or chords get offset by an 1/8 note. But if we unlock this, then this becomes a maximum, not unlike the rhythm engine, so that it gets randomized also up to this maximum within this range of 1 or 2/16th notes it might get offset by. But where it gets really interesting is with the count settings. So let's refine our octave randomization. Okay, and now those are being randomized every single time a note comes through. And they're all set to be pre-play randomization counted, because it depends where you want to start your count from. But let's only allow the octave randomization, which I've now set to 100% just to hear it better, to occur every third note that comes through. Okay, something going on there, right? And now we can also randomize the pitch. And there's a new pitch randomization mode that I think is pretty cool. I'm not sure, Neurotech, if I totally understand the question. +1 on the audio follower or some noise gate driving via transients. I'm not sure what the question is exactly, but it's mostly like it's being triggered by those drums, and those drums are randomizing around. So that's why it's not in a repeating pattern. And they are delayed by a 16th note, and then they've got all this modulation applied to them. But okay, so what was I about to get into there? Yes, excuse me. I'm so excited to answer the questions that I just veer right into them. Sorry about that. So yeah, the pattern randomization mode. So now it's going to give you a repeating randomized pattern. So the pattern is randomized, but it repeats. And we've got the number of steps here. So let's say 3 pitch random values. So let me turn the octave randomization off. Let's just solo this for a moment. So it's always randomizing between those 3 step values, which we don't have a read on. You just have to play around with it. Now you can click here to re-randomize if you don't like that set of values. That's nice. But now we don't have to iterate through those 3 randomized pitch steps every input. We can do that every second input, or every third, or invert, whether it's every third or every non-third. So the first and second, but the third one remains true to the input value and is not randomized. So you get all this really kind of intricate control with the count probabilities here. Got some real jazzy chord holds there. And let's only make that 23% hold probability eligible every 5th chord that comes through will have a 23% chance of being held. So it's going to be less often, just kind of spicing it up occasionally. In which case, maybe let's go 33%. The velocity randomization works much the same. But it pulls from the same count as the play. And we can, of course, use the play to sort of fade input in, not by volume, but by probability until we obtain the full density of notes coming through. We've also got this new transposition mount. So you can transpose in 5 semitones. That's a great question, Element. My understanding from, well, let's just put it after the chords here. So it applies to the whole chord, is my understanding. At least it's counted per chord. The chords are processed. The full chords go through it. As far as the pitch randomization, whether it's applied to the chord or individually to each note, I guess is irrelevant with this pitch pattern mode. But with other modes, it could be more relevant. Okay. That's some funny stuff there with the display when I move it around, but still working good. Now I've already got velocity deviation coming from the conversation engine. But another fun thing we could do is with the X relay, use the X relay count settings to only pass every third note into the chance engine to begin with. So there are all kinds of different ways you can play with this stuff performatively, eliminating notes in very musical ways, either via probability or via count. But I think, yeah, now that we're on this tip, I want to grab another chance engine, and I'm going to use it in the generate mode to see what we can do to come up with some new sort of synth pattern. I love the suspense of those held notes there. Yeah, let's do a little lead situation here. Oh, excusez-moi, that is a little spicy. Pitch it up an octave. Okay, that's a little more mellow. So we've got base rate with divisor here to determine the fundamental pulse at which these notes will be generated. But let's go ahead and get into our Euclidean programming here. So basically, I've gone Euclidean across the whole product line. Almost everything that has the capability for some Euclidean option, it's in there now. So let's get this pattern of 11 fills of 23 steps. Let's fill 23 steps with only 9. And then we can easily invert those. Okay, now let's get intricate with our pitch. I'm going to actually just pause the chance engine, just disable the X relay, use it like a MIDI gate there. So now we've got 100% randomization, but it gets a lot more interesting when I apply it selectively. So only every third note is being randomized now for pitch. And let's make it more lead-like. I'm not so sold on the sound. I'm not in love with it. Okay, so we could again try to investigate the pattern mode here, and let's set it to a pattern of length of only 4. And so now you can hear those same 4 random notes being stepped between. Let's hear it every second note. Or every inverted third note. But you see it retains the pattern. It's selecting from those same options, which can be expressed through a different range. So it's not fixed to specific notes. It's those 4 steps scaled within this minimum maximum range of relative note pitches. And we can also delay the output and play with all this other fun stuff. Let's add some 50% chance of... Oh, wait, what am I talking about? Yeah, 50% chance of offsetting by 1/16th note every other note. So it just adds so much more rhythmic variation to have that chance of a certain note delayed. So we got this fixed, repeating Euclidean pattern, but now every once in a while, 50% of the time, approximately one of them will be delayed by a 16th. Yeah, totally. We're interlocking all the patterns, all the counting, the random pattern with the Euclidean, stepping through it, all the stuff, all the fun stuff. And again, we can change the rate that the Euclidean pattern is being stepped through. And there's been some internal work to tighten up the clock and all that. And we can also set it to receive mode. And again, sorry for it being off camera, but I'm just transposing with the push here. So you can really play it performatively. There's some new ARP modes as well. Let's get it back to our 16th note trigger. that drum pattern is pretty sharp. I like that the X tonal is coming through so clear. That's nice. I do have an auto filter on there, which was initially something I put on there for the drums. And then, yeah, some more under the hood changes, like sorry, I'm just fussing with the lead sound because I think it just, there we go. Okay, so I was going to show the X reverb, but it's not that exciting, the X verb, just some changes under the hood. Maybe I'll get into the X delay later. Yeah, let's go ahead and generate some more rhythmic layers with the rhythm engine on maybe the rim shot here. So I'll just grab another instance of our trusty workhorse rhythm engine here. And I want to tighten up the sound of it. It seems a little off somehow. There we go. That's working better for me. It's a little busy, right? So I can open up a little more space in the probabilistic rhythm by just expanding the multiplier range to 4. So it'll occasionally have a longer rest in there and skew more towards that. Let's also pitch it up. Yeah, maybe that's part of why it sounds so loose. And let's give it a little velocity deviation. So, you know, the maximum velocity is still 127, but if I give it 127 deviation, it'll skew towards the higher end of that range most of the time. Could be a little much. Oh yeah, our keys were bringing the vibe. Let me just reactivate those. So I think the leads and the X tonal are somewhat in conflict here. So I'm just going to go ahead and pitch these. Trying to find a different register where they make more sense. But I think that actually the answer here, when in doubt, just going to drop that play probability way down. There we go. And that's why Chance Engine exists, to explore the probability space in a variety of ways, including giving things more space through probability or a reduction thereof. Okay, so we're back in Vibe Town with the keys bouncing along here. I would like to add some pads, but well, yeah, let's just quickly do that. That could be a good example to look at the X verb quickly. So let's go ahead and let's grab our Drift Kit pads here. Why not? And I will just do my little infinite loop thing here. Okay, let's randomize that a couple of times. There we go. It's got some nice motion to it. Okay, cool. So yeah, the X verb. So I retuned the feedback, which now has this red color to sort of warn you it might get a little out of hand. And you can still really kind of playing with fire right now. It's a lot easier to keep under control though. Previously that feedback was really a little dangerous. I apologize if it ever caused you any shock. But let's go ahead and get our high pass, our inline high pass there. Oh, actually, why do that when I can just use the inline high pass? Dedicated inline high pass on the reverb. And you know, the whole beauty of this is we can say, let's give ourselves a 4-bar reverb. And we can skew the size in such a way. And we can easily double or half the length. And there's that feedback getting very intense. So, but it gives you a nice little textural option there. And if I do the pre-delay and the fade in, let's give it a quarter note fade in. You can see that reflected here. Anyway, that's not so new, but the feedback is, I think, much improved. And we can freeze it at any time. Okay, so I think we've succeeded with the with these pads. 100% wet, maybe it's a bit much. Okay, so maybe it would be more interesting to take a look at some of the Pulse Engine features, which I did tease with the original track that I started this session with. And it's got some very cool new decay modes that I think bring it to life in powerful new ways. And then maybe I'll use the subtraction engine after that to extract some Euclidean patterns from what's going through it. Okay, so let's go ahead and grab another. Let's do another keys sound. Okay, so let's give it some pitch decay. Okay, so as you can see, the note pitch decay is just going all the way up. But what if it didn't? What if it went back down afterwards? That's what the fold is for. And let's restrict the range of that. There we go. And now the chaos is applied within the contours of that. So the sound needs work. And the range is a little bit crazy. It does not need to go that fast. Let's restrict it to 30-second note maximum. So, you know, these note runs are absolutely insane, but they're great for some ornamental sort of fills. So what I like to do is reduce the chance that the pulses are going to be triggered. And the sound is just not, it's not the one. There we go. Something more like that, that can work. So what I want to do is have it respond to the keys. So what I'm going to do is take the input from the D keys and we'll set it to in. And then I'll set this to the fill mode. So whenever it's no longer receiving a note in, it will try to fill that space with these sort of randomized gestures. Okay, and let's set it to straight, so only 16th and 32nd notes are available, no triplets or anything like that. Let's apply some LFO. So you can see it's trying to go between when the chords are playing. So let's let's go back and reduce the chance of the pulses occurring. And then we have this new density control. And then I just had an idea for something I want to try with Xtonal. Let's bring the note length down and add some negative decay on the note length so they get shorter, and then have it wrap so that when they get to the minimum length, they go back to the input length and then down again. Okay. Nice. And we have, of course, all these different randomization algorithms that have been added with the latest version of Pulse Engine. And let's make it respond to the incoming pitch and start maybe one octave above that. So, yeah. That's working. Just a little occasional burst. So yeah, let's go back to the core kit. And yeah, those ornaments, the whole point of them is to dub them out. So let me give them... It's a bit too much reverb and delay, but it's a little bit too much going on there. But you know, the whole point is to capture a long string of this, and then you extract your favorite bits, the best bits. Yeah, I didn't put any velocity decay. That would also help. So the velocity diminishes within each little note run there. I think that'll make it sound more natural. Yeah. And the problem is that this is in blend mode. I was like, why do the chords get so loud? Let's keep it in solo. There we go. And then it's still happening too often. I'll drop it down to like a 12% chance. There we go. Nice. And we're cruising along with all this stuff at like 10% CPU so far. Yeah, definitely a number of optimizations across the board. Let's go to the bass drum here. And I want to drop an instance of our Xtonal on the kick drum to see if we can add a tuned sub just to that. I have not actually attempted this yet, but in theory it should work. Sweet. Okay, drop it down an octave. And so C1, that's our root note. Add some resonance to the tone. Let's just hear it all the way wet. Bring the volume up. Drop it down another octave. I think I need to play with the shape. Wonder why the pitch doesn't want to go below a certain amount. I need to look at adding a dedicated sub-oscillator to this, but it is adding some tone to the kick. Yeah, that's something. Drop the decay down. Okay. A little extra tone. Yeah, so look for a sub-oscillator, dedicated sub-oscillator coming soon to the X-Tonal. But you know, we experiment, we play, we see what we can do. Let's look at using the rhythm engine as another way to generate some keys here. So I'm just gonna put this guy on hold again. And that's working. Yeah, nice deep vibes. Let's go to another X keys is working for us today. The D keys, excusez-moi. And yeah, let's use the rhythm engine on this. And let's do another chord situation here. So I just thought of a really cool, fun little way we could modulate the deviation on there, which would be grab ourselves a little auto dubber. And there we go. And let's say every fourth, let's add some deviation. Let's make it a bar. And that's way too much. I wonder why it sounds lower. So it's just our free auto dubber modulator. And so I think that's just like a little too much. But every fourth bar, we set the rate to 1 bar, and now it's happening every fourth bar. gets applied to the pitch there. And let's open up the rhythm to be a little less busy. By just increasing the multiplier. And we can say only allow even or only allow odd multipliers through, but I'll leave it on all. And then let's apply some negative deviation. Add a little room reverb. I mean, it sounds like there's some here within the D keys, but I just want to see, we've got, yeah, such a wide range there, but it's right in the middle. Okay, and this is bipolar, so it should be hovering at 0 deviation there. Just trying to understand why here's some pitch changes, what seem like pitch changes going on. So now we've got these two different chords we can go between, right? So we can just pause it when we're ready for a break. And of course, we can map that to a key or automation or whatever we want. We also have a pattern mode. So it'll capture a sequence of 8 step multiplication lengths, which will repeat in a way that ends up being polymetric because of the different lengths of the steps, but it cycles through them in a more cyclic way. And we can select just the first few sections there. Yeah, thanks for turning in, Neurotech. That's awesome. What we're here for. So you can see it cycling through these 3 steps of length pattern that it's captured. Whereas if I go back to the flow mode, it just keeps generating new variations, right? So this might be something worth capturing here as MIDI. So many D keys, it's the last one, right? So let's arm that. Post effects is correct. And let's capture that in. So there is remaining a little deviation coming in there somehow. I think because the modulator applies even just the tiniest amount, even at 0. But I like what it's spitting out, and interesting to verify that way. So let's go back and like, I'm just going to disable this. Yeah, it's 0 deviation. It shouldn't change at all, right? So it was the auto dubber, the slight modulation amount imposing a non-zero value to the deviation somehow. So it wasn't working exactly as expected, but we could automate it in a clip, right? So let's go and do that. It'll be a little more accurate. So I'm not going to put any notes here. I'm just going to add some modulation here, and we're going to unlink it and make it 4 bars. And my idea was the deviation would be applied every 4th bar by whatever that corresponds to. Let's try it. That's more what I had in mind. So every fourth bar, we're getting a jump, and let's make it every eighth bar a wider range of deviation. And let's record this, and we'll compare how the MIDI clips look in the end. It's maybe going up a little too high there. Okay, and then it's back at the original pitch. So that's a little more correct. So I think it has to do with the fact that the modulators, they slightly pull things by tiny float off of exact zero. And so that's why we were getting these other perturbations here against my wishes and against my designs. But let's take a listen because it still turned out cool. Actually, I would have to put it back on the track, which is expressing the instrument, to hear how it sounded. So let's just do that and go ahead and pause, solo, disable. Okay, so now that we've got that coming through, it might be interesting to try the new subtraction engine on there. And so subtraction engine, the new subtraction architecture is what Conversation Engine was built on. And that's going to be here. So we can say, don't ever play on the downbeats. As simple as that. But then we can also, lock them so they never change. Those are always exempted. And we could have done that count-wise. So every 4, instead of being on, we want it to be off. So we'll invert those. I'm realizing now there's not really an easy way. Okay, yeah, let's invert the lock states and then invert these. There we go. So those are locked off based on the count settings. And I'm not going to do any count reset. I'm just going to leave those locked. But let's do a weighted randomization. So they're slightly more likely to be on. Every 4 bars, let's get a different expression of this. And again, it's contingent upon the MIDI coming into it. So we don't have MIDI every 16th note here. But so let me stop that clip actually and show how this works really nicely in conjunction with the rhythm engine, right? So if the rhythm engine were just 1s and 2s, it'll never fall on the downbeats. And it doesn't really matter where the chord is in relation to subtraction engine. It captures it the same way. It processes the chords. And we can always just randomize the eligible unlocked steps whenever we want. And we can do this for a longer pattern now. There used to only be 16 steps, but now we've got up to 64 steps of pattern that we can work with here, which need to be then regenerated once they've been created because they're new. So I'm just manually locking these. If I want to focus on just the section here, I just switch to edit mode and select the eligible step segment here. Turn that one off. Nice. And play this deviation one here. Everything nicely named so you can find it easily. So I think what might be cool here, the one last updated device we haven't really gotten into, I could go way deep on Subtraction Engine. Any one of these tools, I can make a whole track just using the one tool. For example, instead of muting these notes, we could send them to another relay and generate all kinds of other contingent outputs and play around with the Euclidean mode and all those resets like I was showing on Conversation Engine. When this began, but yeah, I have not yet shown the new Octopulse, which has some nice global settings and new Euclidean properties. But let's go ahead and get ourselves something to play it through. And this D keys is doing a lot of heavy lifting for us today. I'm just going to solo this track, and let's randomize the multipliers a couple times. So the mono handling is much better than previously. And now what's really cool, yeah, it's got the swing on there. Nice. Let's shorten all the note lengths. So I'm going to keep it mono and apply a chord after. Yeah, the Subtraction Engine works on any MIDI you feed it, wherever it comes from any MIDI device, any MIDI generator, any MIDI clip. Yes, Subtraction Engine works, and you can adjust all the on-off states in real time, randomize them, do whatever you want. And actually, I'll show one other fun thing with that in a moment. Getting carried away here. Where am I? There we go. Get a chord after the mono. So I want to control what chords are being played here. So similar to Conversation Engine, we now have selective per pulse transposition. So let me just solo pulse 1. And it's every 20th, 16th note. So let's shorten that. And let's go to the advanced settings and give it some Euclidean pulse. And let's make it more often than 7. So now it has inversion. Get the length down nice and low there. Yeah, and so we've got all kinds of offset controls and whatnot. Not going to go too in depth with all the locks and these different properties, but each of these different wow, we're getting classic house organ vibes going here between those two. Let's, with the mono mode, only one of them will play at a time, right? But we can also send each individual pulse to a different X relay instance anywhere in a set. So let's just go ahead and grab something that I haven't used yet today just to really set it apart so we can clearly hear the difference, and grab an X relay to send it on. There we go. And let's do relay 3 and go back here. And now and this track is soloed, so let me. So each one of these 8 pulses can go to any instrument destination of your set with the X relay. These are all set up to be triggered by push, and so that brings me to the next option here. I want to fix this collision a bit. Okay, so again, what I can do now is transpose the whole pattern via incoming MIDI here, which I need to see where it's coming in from. Hang on one second. Seems to be, yeah, see, it's still getting from these keys. No, thank you. I do not wish to receive that anymore. That's why it was bugging out. So now I'm playing those notes in, and it's transposing both the D keys and the collision. But as you might have noticed with these individual transpositions, we can enable this on a per pulse basis. So let's just transpose these three here. And let's add this to the transposition. Why is that grooving so hard? I didn't even know. I think that collision is pitched a little high, and it's really just for example. I don't even want to. There we go. We got so many keys going on here, it's actually going a little crazy. Okay, I'm going to just keep tweaking that filter all day because I'm vibing with this Octopulse chord situation. There's a lot going on here. It's time to begin winding down, I'm afraid. And we do have a little giveaway for those of you who stuck it out, which is awesome. But I would like to really have all of you type any last questions you have in the chat, because that's what this session is for in large part. Any last tools you want me to go over, or anything I didn't show, or anything you want me to show again? Any last questions at all? Anything you're curious about? Bring out one of the MIDI generators. What would make you decide between them? Or better, what way would excel? Yeah, that's a great question. So Pattern Engine for me, still one of my all-time faves, is ultimately like monophonic. So if you want like a traditional sequence, I go for Pattern Engine. And the ideas that comes out of that thing are just, for me, magical. It's just got some special sauce in there. And yeah, so that's great for when you don't want any notes happening concurrently. Octopulse is more geared originally for rhythmic stuff, polyrhythmic, polymetric, layered material where different notes can play over top of each other. And Chance Engine in the generator mode is when you want to do something a little more specific, not necessarily a sequence, although the pattern mode within it starts to get close to that, the new pattern randomization option, which, you know what I'm going to show? I haven't really shown it properly yet, and it helps visualize that function quite nicely, is I added that also to our MIDI Sample and Hold Pro. I think all of our Pro Sample and Holds got it. So I can go here to the pattern mode, and you see the same 8, and I would need to, let's go ahead and put it on the track I'm actually using here. Sorry, I got kind of sidetracked from the question, but no, I did kind of address Chance Octopulse pattern. Chance Engine is really devised primarily as a processor, but when you want to get that sort of count-based control and unfold patterns in the Chance Engine generate mode from the Euclidean basis or just a straight 16th basis with the count-based randomization, Chance Engine just gives you a different approach. So in all cases, I would say, to put it most crudely, I would say Octopulse for polyphonic or polyrhythmic stuff, Pattern Engine for more traditional sequencer stuff, and Chance Engine for more isolated either processing or specific rhythmic count-based generative stuff. But they, at the end of the day, really, the short answer is they're just different ways to access new ideas. Yes, let's go ahead and map this to the cutoff. Okay. So there's needs to be some slew there. So it's stepping through them on a per note basis because it's a sample and hold, but you'll see it's stepping through those same 8 steps of a random pattern. Let me shorten that down. So those are the first 3 steps, right? So maybe if I want a more dynamic 3-step, we can randomize till we get a good one. There we go. And now where it gets really cool, we can performatively expand all the way to 512 steps. And then go down to the minimum 2. And then if I go to 3, it's those same 3 we were on originally. So we could map that to a macro. And then what I would do here is set the minimum to 3. And then let's say the maximum is 32, 16. Let's do 16. And then, with the multi-mapping, each additional one of these gets its own sequence. But it repeats and can be opened and closed. And so let's go ahead and map those to some other stuff here. Wave 1, wave 2 maybe. Getting all crazy with the wave modulation on those drifts. Maybe shape and Q, but not so much. Try that. The truth, jumping in. Yeah, so I mostly showed the MIDI devices. We also looked at the external and a little bit of the XFX. Coming from pattern shift, is pattern ending similar? I'm very sorry, I don't know exactly what PTN shift is. I can only keep on top of so much, and there's so much cool stuff going on these days. Is pattern ending similar? So we're talking about the pattern mode of the modulator here. Yeah, I need more information to answer that appropriately, but I would like to. Maybe you can clarify. I sent you a clue. Oh, yeah. Okay, yes. And so I will also quickly show that the LFO X Pro also does have a similar feature. It doesn't have multi-out, but if you were to go to the steps mode, you could randomize a sequence of steps and adjust the length, and then you would have, 5 steps or whatever, and you can adjust them, and then there's a separate slew sequencer that you can modulate, full slew or within a certain gradation definable here, so you can minimize or maximize the range in either one of these. And then you could have it to trigger. So if you put it to trigger mode, it would then behave much like the sequence, the pattern mode here in the S&H Pro, and then step through them similarly, triggered by the incoming MIDI. So yeah, that's the other option. But yes, this is multi-modular and easily length adjustable with a simple re-roll feature. You mean Pattern Engine? Okay. So I'm coming from Pattern Engine. Is Pattern Engine similar? Pattern Engine is similar to, I mean, there are different parts of these that are incorporated in Pattern Engine. You know what? For the last couple minutes here to clarify this, I will just drop the new Pattern Engine in, especially because it does have a fun new feature. Can we map the dice to the macros? I think that you can. However, yeah, it is mappable, but because the pattern will be saved with your live set, you probably don't want to smash the random button like too often. If you want continuous randomization, just go ahead and use the non-pattern mode. So I would use it judiciously, and I wouldn't auto-randomize through this randomizer here. A few times during a set's not a problem, but if you've got auto-randomizing like every bar or something, you're better off just using one of the other randomization modes at that point, because that could end up flooding the undo history, which is not good. So where are we? Not a modulator, but a generator, Pattern Engine. So Pattern Engine, just to satisfy those asking about it today, it remains beloved, dearly beloved, and it's not polyphonic, and it does generate a different note for each step. So let's just randomize there and take a listen. What'd I tell you? Magic. Okay, but so the new mode here, right? So we have the transposition. By default, it's going to be transposed by incoming MIDI. But there was a user whose name eludes me at this point. I'm sorry, but thank you, whoever it was. Maybe you're tuned in right now, who requested this. We've got the internal mode to ignore incoming MIDI. So previously it was just those two modes, but now we've got the step record mode, and it shows which step will be recorded. So now, as I press a note here on my keyboard, boom, step 1 changes and it advances to step 2, enter a new note. So you now have manual sequence entry via MIDI note keyboard. You can't really hear what I'm doing in real time, but there it is. And you can also advance numerically to a different step and just enter that one. Now step 13 has been entered. And then let's go back down here to step 9 and enter step 9. So that's the fun new feature with Pattern Engine, is manual mapping stuff. So I think I've answered all the questions and only found one minor little thing I need to test tomorrow and potentially fix, but everything's looking and feeling pretty good, cruising along. A very manageable CPU with all the recent optimizations, which I'm very happy about. Now, anyone who already upgraded the Ultra Bundle, you've got some fun little goodies in there as of today. Maybe they're not so useful to you, but if you do ever find yourself needing to run a lottery like I'm about to, you now have in your Ultra Bundle downloads this MFA lottery device, along with another little OSC utility added in there today. And so what this does is it's going to generate a random number. And so here's how the giveaway is going to work. I need everyone to guess a number between, let's just do 1 and 100 today. Let's keep it real simple. And I need everyone right now, I'm going to give you all 3 minutes to enter your number between 0 and 100 in the chat. 0 and 100. While I play around with this guy. Ah, yes. Okay. The truth. Yes. So Pattern Engine is a predecessor to Pattern Shift. Tim Exile is great. We've got the numbers coming in. Beautiful. So the closest number is going to win. So yeah, let me show. I got sort of sidetracked on the Pattern Engine stuff, but yes, it's exactly what it does. It continuously permutates or evolves through auto-randomization at specified intervals by specified amounts on each of these 5 parameters that exist on each step. So mute, we can randomize by 62% every 4 bars, pitch by 100% every 8 bars, and so on and so forth. Let's leave the length and tie where they are, but then you can set certain steps to be manual, not respond to chance, or other steps LFO for the pitch and not respond to chance. And then if you want this one to always be on or off, you can lock it and will also not respond to chance. But these auto-randomization parameters allow you to create continuously evolving and permutating patterns. So let's just listen to that for a moment. And I need to press play. So some of the mute steps changed. So it continues to gradually shift and vary based on the 5-step parameters that you can induce automatic changes to with their auto-randomization settings, while excluding specific parameters of specific steps, so you have this meticulous control over them at the same time.